Welcome to the Sound of Movement podcast. Today we're continuing our discussion around assessments, and today's topic is all about how and when they are useful. Yesterday we went deep into talking about when assessments can actually hinder your progress, and today we're going to be talking about when is a good time to do them. Welcome to the show, everyone. It's time to rock. If you're new to the tribe, Rich is behind the mix, Phil's at the table with me. My name's Rad Burmeister, and we are Unity Gym, experts at turning driven people into athletes. This episode is brought to you by the Unify Movement System, the only online program effectively balancing strength, flexibility, and fitness so you can unleash your inner athlete. You can get daily coaching by us, plus our epic Foundations Prep program and revolutionary structural balance blueprint to create your ideal program and optimize your performance. As a valued listener, use the link in the description to get your first month free. And before we get started, a warm welcome if you're on the live stream in the UMS Movement Mastermind Facebook group. Please leave a comment and we'll send you some love. Remember that anyone can join that group and interact with us. And lastly, a shout out to our YouTube athletes catching the replay. Hit the like button to support the channel and subscribe if you like what you see. Okay, as I said before, joining us today is Phil White from ADPT Physio. How are you today, Phil?
Good, mate. Happy to be back on the podcast, and it sounds like we don't have any jackhammers outside today, so things are looking up.
I just realised that. Oh, man, yeah, if you were listening to yesterday's show, you would have heard that.
Yeah, so apologies for that, but yeah, no, good. How are you doing, Rad?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm actually really tired today. I had my son's feet in the back of my back last night, 4-year-old. It's quite enjoyable. Not really, but it's really hard because you're filled with this love and cuteness of when you roll over and go, Keanu, what are you doing? And he's like, you're just going, and he's like fast asleep, but you just get the worst sleep, man. And anyway, so I'm going to pep myself up for this show. And today is it's a really good show because to give context to today's show, you really should listen to yesterday's podcast because this really is a continuation on. Yesterday we were talking about how assessments can really be the wrong thing for people because people get paralysis by analysis, and how by just following a balanced program and periodizing what you do, you can really fix most issues in the body.
Yeah, and doing it consistently and building in progressive overload, like you'll get great results.
Yeah. As long as the program itself is balanced. So balanced in agonist and antagonist or opposing muscle groups within a joint, balance from upper to lower body, balance from flexibility to strength, all the good things, balanced unilaterally from left to right side. But today we're going to talk a little bit more about when assessments can be useful, when is a good time to do them. And I'm going to pre-frame this and then I'll hand it over to you, Phil. But my thoughts on when assessments are very useful is when you have a means to deploy the results and use them really seamlessly. And I think where a lot of people go wrong is they do these big fancy assessment processes, but then there's no system in place for using that data to fix the issues. There's just, okay, here's your results, and now we're just going to go and do this anyway. And people are left, like I've had experiences like that where you get assessed from a doctor or a specialist or whatever, and you get this information, but there's no action plan for it. Yeah. And I think that's what we were trying to steer people away from yesterday. But if you can go through a good assessment process and have something in place that shows you this is how you use this data and these are the actions you need to take, then I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that. But then I sometimes think that people even go a bit too far with that, where they can be so, like tunnel focused on specific assessment results that they throw out, a lot of the like big foundational things that you should also be doing. And it can really build this sort of tunnel vision around certain, like in inverted commas, like imbalances or problems in inverted commas again, like of what you have, and get really focused on that, and then sort of just throw out the rest of all the generalized training that is so key to have as your go-to practice, and then that becomes almost like a circuit breaker for good training and takes you down this rabbit hole of trying to fix problems that may, would often with, for injuries, for example, will kind of come back to being okay if you just got give it some time and keep up the rest of the stuff. So I think it's definitely obviously really useful if you have a plan of what to do with the assessments. But yeah, just the one thing I would again warn against is just absolute tunnel vision with taking yourself out of good programming and just trying to focus on that. But I think, talking about how the assessment protocol is used in Unity would be a good place to start about an example of
for sure.
what to do it.
And I agree with everything that you just said, because it is, and I've been there before. I've been that guy that realized I had whatever going wrong in my body, and I just went so far down the rabbit hole of just trying to fix that thing. It does limit your progression in other areas. And my personal experience is that eventually, when I overcame whatever imbalance I was trying to, it just uncovered another imbalance that may not have been there if I hadn't have stopped certain things. And what do we mean by that is, when you do a program like the UMS program, the Unified Movement System, and you follow our assessment process, there's certain things that are always included. Like, you always have a squat pattern in there. You always have a deadlift pattern in there. You always have a horizontal push and a horizontal pull. It doesn't matter what the results are, those movement patterns are still in there. In rare cases, sometimes people will double down on a vertical push-pull or a horizontal push-pull if the results are really out of whack and it shows that they're that imbalanced. And we do encourage that sometimes on some scenarios, but I always try and tell people not to do it for more than 2 mesocycles, just one accumulation phase, one intensification phase, retest, and that usually fixes any imbalances that are that bad.
For people who are fairly new to this shows, a mesocycle is 6 weeks.
6 weeks, that's right. Yeah. So that'll be 12 weeks. So that's when we test every 12 weeks. But the fundamental things that are always there is there's always a balance between pushing and pulling movements. There's always a balance between upper and lower body. And there's just certain boxes that are always ticked. It's just that the results will tell you that maybe you need to, focus on your external rotation work or your trap 3 raise, or maybe you need to focus on a dumbbell chest press rather than a barbell bench press, things like that. And by doing that and by keeping it relatively simple, but also giving people a process where they can uncover weaknesses and imbalances in their body and then have the means to correct those without having to go down that rabbit hole of, I'm only going to fix this one thing. That's proven to be really, really powerful for the people that have stuck with that, for long enough to see a change.
Yeah. Do you want to give a brief overview of what is actually done?
In the assessment process? Absolutely. So the first thing we do is we do a 6RM test with the flat barbell bench press and narrow grip barbell bench press. And what I mean by narrow grip is just not a wide grip. So when you're holding the barbell, the inside of your hands are just where the outside of the shoulder is. So you're not as strong as you are with a wider grip, which is a part of the whole testing process. And we also do a 6RM squat test. And what that means is that we find what the true 6RM weight is. And if you've never heard of that before, 6RM means 6 repetition max. It's basically the maximum weight you can lift for 6 reps with strict tempo notation, meaning
this
you can't
catch a lot of people is the tempo, and we get people to do it with a metronome, so it's
so the tempo we use is 30x0, which means 3 second eccentric or 3 seconds on the way down, or on the bench press, lowering the barbell to your chest for 3 seconds, no pause, straight back up as quick as you can and straight into the next rep. So if you break that tempo at all, it's a failed test. So it's very, very strict guidelines. And what this does is by using that strict tempo, it ensures that when you do subsequent testing weeks that the parameters stay the same and you can really track your progress, which is really, really important. It's not just about just get 6 reps however you can get them. That doesn't give you good...
Like other people who do, a 6RM, like they might be, use 6RM as... you drop you can't even lift the weight and you basically have to have someone pick it up off you. And it's really important to understand that's quite different to what we're doing here. It's key, as you said.
You have to be able to do it completely on your own. You come if you're spotted for 1 rep, then that rep doesn't count. And then what we do is we've got 13 lifts, some upper body, some lower body, that are all basically calculated as a percentage off what the 6RM bench press and the 6RM back squat is. And they've all been, the calculations have come from mostly from Charles Poliquin and Tony Battaglia, by looking at athletes in certain areas where they looked for commonalities, similarities between, what the percentage of their deadlift was compared to their squat, or what the percentages of their split squat was compared to their back squat, what the percentage of a shoulder press was compared to the bench press, the percentage of a pull-up to a bench press, so on and so forth. And the idea is, after we've got the 6RM, we test all of the other lifts at the percentage that they should be at. So, for example, for the flat bench press, the 30-degree incline bench press should be 85% of what the flat bench press was. So if you did 100 kilos for 6 reps on your bench press, you test how many reps you can do at 85 kilos on the incline bench press, and the result that you get is the number of reps you do, not the weight that you lifted. The weight you lifted is set. So if you get 2 reps or 10 reps, both of those numbers tell us that there's an imbalance. If you get 2 reps, it shows that the incline bench is weak relative to the flat bench. If you get 10 reps, it shows that the flat bench is weak relative to the incline bench. And then so on and so forth for 13 lifts. And then those numbers allow us to say, okay, well, this is where you need to prioritize your training for the next 2 mesocycles. But what it does is it just determines which movements you select on the actual day. So, for example, in the UMS, we do bench pressing on Thursdays, so horizontal push-pull. I shouldn't say bench pressing, horizontal push-pull. So in the case that you got 2 reps for the 30-degree incline bench, then it would mean on your Thursday workout, you would do 30-degree incline bench pressing. You wouldn't necessarily just do 30 degrees. You could do 2 mesocycles, one where you do 30 degrees, one where you do 45 degrees, but you do incline bench pressing. But another example could be you may have got on the dumbbell press, which the dumbbell press is 45% of the 6RM bench, so that means in each hand. So if you've got a 100 kilo bench, you're doing 45 kilos in each hand. You may have gotten 2 reps on the left hand and 6 on the right. And we want to know that. You don't stop when one arm can't move, you keep going on the other arm. So that shows a significant unilateral imbalance, which would mean that for the next 2 mesocycles, you'd prioritize dumbbell bench pressing. But if you also got a low score on the incline bench press, you'd do incline dumbbell bench pressing. So the movement pattern stays the same. You're still following the basic programming principles of the UMS, but you're creating a custom program that is very, very easy to do because it's just a click and choose on our spreadsheet, and it delivers great results.
Yeah, and I think it's such a good example of like you're getting data and you're standardizing the test, like the assessment protocol, and that's what in physio, the amount of time we spent talking about, like, if you like, because physio is so much about assessment, it's so key to have all these standardized things in place. And so with that idea of having tempo and those specific movements and a certain way of doing a certain range of motion, it's so key. And then having a really like clear thing to use it with, like this is when assessments are so useful. I think just thinking about when assessments are another reason they are so useful is it becomes quite motivating. Like having that tangible feedback of like, hey, I did my 6RM squat and bench X amount of months ago, and then I'm doing it again. Like that gives you some really good, because like training, if you're doing it year after year after year, can it might get a bit dull for you. And so having these things in place where you can get that good feedback that you're making progress is okay. And obviously not only just the squat and the bench press, seeing an imbalance like that, 6 on one arm and 2 on the other, like that equalizing, like that's going to be something that keeps you engaged and keeps that exercise habit up. And so it's...
and personally, I have to feel like I'm training for a reason. Like I have to feel like I know that my training is leading me towards being better at the things that I want to do. And I think if you've never gone through this assessment process and you don't understand your body, then I think training can quite easily become that for you, where you feel a bit lost. You don't really know if what you're doing is going to get you to where you want to go. And another thing that's part of our assessment process that I haven't mentioned yet is flexibility assessments. We have I think we have 9 flexibility tests that we do, and they are really a way for you to track your progress and again to see the areas where you need the most work. So we have a flexibility component to the UMS. It's done 1-to-1 strength and flexibility, and again, if you just do it the way it's written, you're going to get more flexible. But what the flexibility assessments allow you to do is they allow you to track. And we've had members that have shown us a picture from when they started doing a really woeful pancake 12 months ago, and now showing a head to floor pancake 12 months later. That's really valuable to be able to see that you've gotten better, because sometimes we get a little bit bogged down in feeling like we're not improving. Yeah. And then the other thing it does is, again, we have the standards for the flexibility, like there's, descriptions, hopefully you can get your body to this angle or whatever. So if you can't do that in A, B, and C, but you can in all the other ones, then okay, I'm going to do a little bit more work on these ones in my workouts.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this is obviously strength and flexibility being kind of covered here. And I guess with Unity, not so much about, specific fitness testing, but myself, I've just got really quite into running again. I used to do it quite a lot, but now just re-entering it, and my watch gives me takes the heart rate and looks at the pace I'm going, and gives me a bit of a VO2 max kind of estimate, and then and then it gives you a pace, your race pace estimate as well. So it tells you based on your heart rate data plus your speed over.
What's your VO2 max estimate?
It's, I don't know. I don't believe. I think it's it says 52. It says it's excellent, but I think in the past I think I've gone a bit higher than that. So, but it's actually it's
a
bit lower.
You've gone higher than that, you reckon?
Yeah, and so which is actually quite motivating. So I'm I want to bump those numbers up. And so what's also quite cool is it then gives you your 5K race pace estimate, your 10K, your 21K, and your marathon pace. And so just by taking all that data of each time you go for a run, it will start to do that. And it gives me a 23-minute estimate on my 5K, and I ran a 21 at the end of a marathon, 21 minute, just under that at the end of a triathlon for 5Ks. And so I'm a fresh 5K I could do sub 20, but anyway, it's still just one of those little things that is so motivating, and it makes you that's where assessments can be so powerful, is that it gives you this benchmark that you think okay, if I get consistent and turn up every week and do the work, that's when it becomes so useful. So I do recommend.
Our members love it. I mean, the empowerment that they feel when they go through a couple of assessment weeks. Our assessment process goes for a week. And when they start to see improvements, and they come up to me and go, "Rad, look at this! Look at how much I've improved. Last time I did the assessment, I only got 2 reps on the trap 3 raise, and this time I got 6." Meaning that's describing the goal is to get 6 reps at the target weight. So getting 2 shows a massive imbalance in that movement. But then then people say, "Well, what do I do about this?" And it's really simple. You say, do the trap 3 raise at the end of your workouts for twice a week, and watch what happens in 12 weeks. And they come back 12 weeks later and they're balanced with it, And that's a huge thing. It's not just empowering, but imagine what's going on in the body, Because otherwise, before I knew how to do assessments like this, even being a qualified personal trainer, I was just choosing exercises. It's not like they were poorly chosen, but it wasn't for much of a reason more than, well, we didn't do those in the last phase, so let's do them now. So this is far more valuable to you if you can say, well, I'm going to do these exercises because I tested weak in them, and I know that they're going to bring me closer to being having a balanced body. Yeah,
definitely. And I think with the way that the assessments are run in the gym here, and I think it's a great idea as it's a built-in sort of deload week, and that might seem crazy for people who've been but you're trying to lift as heavy as you can. But when you think about how much total load you're putting through the body, this is the volume is the variable that's been massively reduced, and that acts as a really nice sort of neat way of getting a bit of a deload, because recovery is so key. And so having this assessment side where it's planned deloading is a really great way of getting multiple benefits in one go.
And it's funny because you're reminding me, there was a time when we used to do deload week and assessment week separately. There was a time where out of a 6-week mesocycle, we used to deload in week 6, and then we would test in week 1. And everybody was just saying, "Man, it just feels like I'm not doing enough for too long, for 2 weeks out of a 6-week period." And so we decided to put them together because exactly what you said, deloading is critical. If you're going to train consistently and you're really going to be working for strength gains and muscle hypertrophy and flexibility and fitness gains, you do get to that state of overreaching where you're It's not overtraining. Overtraining is very different, but overreaching where you start to feel weaker. You feel like, oh man, I'm weaker this week than I was last week. And that's when you've got to deload the volume in order to super compensate and get stronger or more flexible or fit or whatever you've been working on. And testing week actually allows you to do that, because even though we're trying to lift maximally, we're trying to lift as much weight as we can, the volume is just so much less. So yeah, it's a really nice thing to do, and a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. And I think so to really, wrap this up in a neat sort of way, like we talked about yesterday, the idea of signal versus noise, and assessments are so useful when you can get good signal from that. So what I mean by that is useful data that we can then implement and get a noticeable change. And so just to for people who didn't listen to the previous ones, where when you're really new to training, like go through the assessment like we have at the Unity assessment. It's a really useful process to go through and learn to get the movements. But when your training age is young, when your technique is not great, when you're just quite new to these sort of movements, the assessments won't necessarily be a super accurate demonstration of your maximal strength or whatever, because you've got so much variability, so much noise with just the variation in technique and just as you're starting out, you get neurological gains that haven't sort of capped out yet. So it's one of those things where it's like it's useful to go through the process, but you might not get the best information. But yeah, we do recommend that people go through the process of learning how it's done. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good point, Phil, not to skip over. When you are new to training and new to lifting weights, assessing is not what you need to be doing. What you need to be doing is just refining your technique, because the technique, without a refined technique, without an ability to reproduce predictable results.
Standardizing again.
Yeah, standardizing, to make sure that your bar path is going to travel up and down every time you squat, and your feet are going to, you're going to be able to lift this, your maximal weight. It's not like it was a fluke because your feet were in the right position, but the last set before that your feet weren't. Until you get to that point, testing is not a great, is not a very valuable thing, is it?
Yeah, and I think having a good understanding of that standardization is really key as well. So just consider when you are coming up to a testing week or an assessment, think about what you're doing outside of the gym as well. And if you've just gone for a multi-day hike or something a couple of days before you do your testing, and you haven't eaten as well as you might have, or you've had a couple of big nights, all those things are going to play into the results you get, and you might see it might not be an accurate sort of representation of your true strength and ability. So do try and keep in mind these sort of external factors and try and control them as much as you can. Obviously not everyone can, you can't just make life all about training, but certainly that's the really key thing to think about. Assessments are so useful when you are able to standardize a lot about what you're doing, so you can see a true result.
Yep. And if you want to know how we do it, take a dive. Start a 1 month free trial of the UMS online coaching, and if it's not for you, you can cancel before the 5 week mark, and you won't pay a cent. So give it a go. Give it a go. See what you think. Learn how we get better results than any other online program with our athletes. And thanks for tuning in, everyone. Any final thoughts, Phil?
No. I think just take if you can do assessments, great, but only do them for the right reason. Don't go down the rabbit hole. Yep. And happy training.
For sure. Have a good day, everyone. See you later.
Health is about performance, not just body image.
You better be willing to accept what you're going to have to do to get there.
We'll start focusing on movement goals, strength goals, flexibility goals.
When you nail that skill, it's there forever.
The body image goal doesn't get you that far.
It's the consistency and frequency that's going to get you there. It's not the intensity.
There's no shortcuts to mastery and movement. Destination doesn't change overnight, but your direction will.
The gym is not the place to beat up the body that you hate. It's the place to build the body that you love.
We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.